Welcome to series Architects Talk with Kalebodur. Today I have a very distinguished and special guest, let me say, Dr. MARWA Al SABOUNI.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced it
perfect.
better. She's an architect. She's our neighbor. She's coming from Homs, Syria, and she's an author. She's also a speaker and writer, and she's running, as far as I know, one of the very unique Arabic architectural platform.
Yeah, co-running, because it's, this one is just run by my partner, my husband and partner.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
Co-running.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank you for giving your time. I know you are here for another activity, actually, so you'll be one of the speakers tomorrow within an activity that is organized by Practicing Architects Association in Istanbul. Yeah. So it was an opportunity for us to be with you. Let me start from something that you said, or I hope I quoted it in a proper way. You say relation between, there is a direct relation between architecture and peace.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like you kindly introduced me. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, first of all, and thank you for having me. In my first book, The Battle for Home, I make a case about the role of architecture in conflicts, and by that, how architecture could contribute to war and also can contribute to peace. So it's a tool, if we use it properly, it's a tool for bringing societies and communities together and to make a sustainable coexistence and living amongst those communities.
Yeah, that is it something which is unique to our geography? I mean, where we live, or is it valid for all the geographies?
No, I think it's a global phenomena and global tool, and but I guess there's something special about the context in which we live that is related to complexity in comparison to other regions. I guess we live in a region that is known for, I mean, for eras and millenniums, for being at the center of many roads and many connections, and this makes our geography very central to many factors. But architecture is a global language. And it's a language that, like I said, can contribute to the well-being of societies, as well as it could contribute to the devastation.
Problems, conflicts.
Yeah, of course.
Starting from that idea, I mean, then can we say that architecture has a crucial role on solving significant problems or creating the problems as a source?
Yeah, it's a cycle, of course, and let me start by saying I don't claim that architecture is like a magical potion or like a magical wand that could solve everything, but it definitely can build channels to direct human behavior. It can trouble, activities in whether economic or social or political in a certain context. So let's put it that way. Architecture could be, it will facilitate certain behaviors, human behaviors, but most importantly, as I make the case in my books, it is the essence of understanding what is home, and enabling a sense of belonging to a place. And by that sense, you could either build your way into making connections and bonds with your country or your environment and your place and with the people who live there. So it's a tool of building societies, or otherwise it is a tool of making life completely meaningless or, you know, based on just stacking people in boxes as we see in most areas around the world today.
Do you have any positive and negative examples in your mind?
About the role of architecture? I mean,
no, I mean about the settlements. Some settlements which are encouraging peace and a better life and
there are principles.
Resolving conflicts and vice versa.
I guess there are principles. There are general principles that you can take off from to understand how the dynamic connection with architecture, how buildings make us respond to them. And I guess when we look at modern architecture in general, how it changed or shifted the concept of human settlement into making it just, you know, to convert human settlement into just shelter. So modern architecture is known to be, you know, the product of the aftermath of the World War I and II, and this architecture was a tool to sell the future after the war, the future that was supposed to be progressive and modern and quote unquote modern and efficient. But also it depended on the idea, the way this product was produced, which was mass production and the assembly line. And this assembly line created a product that should be sold to the people. Mm-hmm. So people had to shift their mode of living to fit modern architecture, whereas for, you know, since the beginning of human life on Earth, the relationship was reversed. It was home or human settlement, you know, or architecture as a tool of building, which responded to how people lived or wanted to live or wished to live.
But when we say modern architecture, actually we are not referring one single entity. One single concept, because I mean there are some examples very highlighted like Le Corbusier or Mies van der Rohe's let's say glass houses and things like that. But on the other hand, especially in our geography, I mean we have a vandalized version of modern architecture, and which is a second-hand production, maybe mostly reduced to let's say a cheaper production, and ease of production, loss of meaning, and loss of that sense of belongingness, and I mean so I mean it is very difficult to differentiate. That's why I asked about the geographies especially. So in that sense I think Syria and Turkey have some similarities in the sense that they are reproducing this modern architecture as a second-hand ideal or something like that.
Well, I guess modernity as an idea is based on a concept what I term in my book Building for Hope as the factory system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And the factory system is a system that is, regardless of the political ideology, is a system that seeks production for the sake of production. So modern architecture, in essence, is this product that should be standardized, that should be, you know, belong to the assembly line, belong to mass production, mass sailing, and like you said, easy and fast to build.
Cheap.
And yeah, but I guess the point you highlight, the important point you brought up about star architects and geographies, we don't have the celebrity culture that accompanied modern architecture in the West. So it's again, if you look at modern architecture as it is, as a product that was had to be sold to the population in the aftermath of the world wars, you would notice that celebrity architects were also part of this the marketing campaign.
That's
for
true.
that product.
They not only market the product but themselves as well.
Of course.
But on the other hand, I mean, yes, we don't have that celebrity culture maybe, but also, I mean, we have in our geographies very important architects and architectural examples which are not highlighted within the mainstream architectural history and theory because it's mostly Western origin to this. For example, I always give this example. I'm the architectural historian Sir Bannister Fletcher has a famous architectural tree, which is growing to different branches, and there are different styles and things like that. And all that tree represents basically and in a very dominant way what is happening in the Western geographies. So only whatever existing in let's say Eastern or Middle Eastern geographies is a very small branch within all that tree, which is not actually the physical reality in that sense.
We do have. There are two things here. From one end, we do have our own struggle with identity. So we have this abrupt disconnection between when the Ottoman Empire fell and all the times of empires and the Muslim nations became under occupation. You have a history of occupation here, and this colonization is a legacy that we struggle with as people of this region. So we have this psychological disconnection with our legacy, and we grapple with what we need from our legacy and how to move forward, because because of occupation, we weren't allowed to grow, to build our future in a way that we, like in an organic way, if you will. So it wasn't like another step into the future. It was something that was abruptly disconnected by colonization, where either the French or the British, whatever you fell, had the package for you to embrace, and it was enforced on you. And here is modernity. Here is how cities should look like. And I tell the story of Syria as an example of a whole region where the French actually brought an architect to reshape the Syrian cities and make a comprehensive plan of how cities should like. The French saw that the city should look like this, and it's not an organic way or a choice made by the people of the place or the society or the cultural elite of the place. It's just, even the cultural elite, if you will, colonization in that period had a role in creating that cultural elite, by choosing certain individuals, by omitting other individuals. So we do have this in common in this region. And in Turkey, for example, although it wasn't directly under occupation, it had this Western infatuation, it's just, this long...
It's a cultural issue.
Yes, wanting to, like, it started with Turkey, the youth, or what do you call it? Turkiya al-Fatat, it's called, when the group of young men embraced the Western culture and wanted to change how they wanted this disconnection with the Ottomans, and they wanted to become create a new identity to themselves. So we do share this conflict of identities, and we do share this disconnection with an organic way of growing into a future that relied in a way to its own history. This disconnection creates this conflict in product that you would see, and this is something that I highlight in the role of architecture, how those cities were transformed in a way that broke many societies and broke many networks and cycles very, very brutally, that it became crippled and it couldn't flourish as it should.
Yes, but on the other hand, I had a chance to look at this Arch News. It's the website that you are running, I think. I couldn't follow it because it was in Arabic.
Yeah. Well, again, it's the idea. This is, as I said, it's the project of my own husband, and he had this idea that we lacked content, architectural content. That was in 2008. So he looked at the internet and found out that Arabic architecture content is very minimal, almost not there, and he wanted to contribute into creating architectural content in order to allow people and students and young people and even the general public to have an insight into the architectural world and to fight this like
conflict.
I said, this conflict of identities, to understand what does it mean for a building. We look at pictures, even in university, we were taught to look at the picture of the project, but to read about the project is more important than to look at it.
Yeah, that's something related to the critical distance that you create with the work and the culture, etc. But most of the images, I couldn't read anything, but when I look at the images, there are lots of Western examples.
It's news, because art news. It's just it's a news feed.
Yes, that's true. But I mean, after a time, doesn't it turn into a kind of a image gathering, with a source that is, I mean, affecting young generation?
Of course, I mean. First of all, I have to mention that this project has been on some kind of halt since the beginning of the war, because the office and the staff and everything was devastated by the war. So it's a project that again I feel a bit embarrassed to speak about project that I'm not, I'm a partner, but not the
partially
owner.
Part.
Yes, yeah, of course. I'm not, but again, I know where it comes from. I know where the importance of it stems from, and it's from the need to, like I said, to enrich Arabic content. And also there has been initiatives like a rebuilding initiative, an invitation to also Arabic commentator in the field of architecture to write in the daily column of it. But all of this has been interrupted by the war. Even the initiative, because it was coming from Syria, it was it wasn't really embraced. Because you need a political context for this, and you need a financial context for this. So for all of that, like I guess it speaks about the whole situation of a country that is being in a frozen mode, if you will, just to like a survival mode.
What is the condition in Syria now?
A survival mode.
I mean, there are a lot of people, as you know, came to Turkey.
Yeah.
I mean, hoping to find a more safe environment for themselves, and a great number of people also moved to other geographies as well, not limited with Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey to a large extent was seen as a launching platform country to Europe. To
other countries. Yeah. That's true. But you decided to stay.
Yeah.
Willingly.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, the short answer. Do you want the short answer or
both?
We're doing an interview. We have to go with the long answer. Well, I guess I will start with the short answer, which is this is my home.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And
for many people, those words would be, by the way, sometimes enough for people who are being, subjugated to the destruction of their home. Like people in Gaza, for example, and Palestine, they would understand that home is something that is is very innate to your nature. It's part of you. It's like soil to trees. It's something that when you are uprooted, and you would use the word uprooted.
It's not a shared, I think, identity or shared sense, because I mean, when things are settled,
yeah,
many people doesn't want or prefer to
exactly.
go back, because they can easily feel a better, let's say, in quotations, home or a life or a safe.
Well, this is the whole point of my writing. I mean, that the destruction of home, this loss of home, has contributed to the fact that we no longer feel that we have to, preserve our cities, and we no longer have something to fight for, and we no longer have something to live sometimes for. And it's epidemic. It's something that is global and international.
That's true.
Yeah, when I was invited after the publication of my first book, I was invited to many places around the world to speak about
the battle for home.
Yeah, the battle for home. And to my surprise, I mean, the international audience from from Ireland to Australia, people responded almost the same. They would say that we do have the same issue here. You are telling a story that resonates with our own reality.
We are already familiar with.
Yeah.
that was the point actually I was trying to come. This is apart from the war, conflicts, or independent from the geographies, this sense of home, the feeling to feel somebody connected to a space, a culture, a history, is becoming weaker each day, I think. Yeah, and it is valid for all geographies.
Of course, to circle back to the question, why did you stay, which was, by the way, the most question I was asked.
I know that.
Yeah, and and every time I find myself answering the question with another angle, because I just want to express that was my home. But that doesn't mean that I already had this connection. First of all, I was like so many people of my generation at the time before the war. Seeking to find my future in other places. I was dreaming to travel. I was dreaming to maybe migrate, or to be away. I didn't know what does it mean to have a home. And war, ironically, was the reason for me to rediscover the meaning of home. And the second thing is for so many people,
it's a way of protest and resistance, maybe at the same time.
Yeah, but for so many people, it wasn't even a choice. I had the luxury of choice to stay, even though there was battles and mortars and bombings all around us. But we did have a choice to stay, because we did have a roof still standing. For so many people, this wasn't a choice. So I don't want to sound here, choosing some kind of heroic action or deeming the choice of other people who left or had left.
Yeah, I understand that. That's true. What's the case now?
Well, it depends on context, very much.
Is there a reconstruction project ongoing? No.
No, first of all, as you would know, a reconstruction project is a very political process, very political, and we do know that in our country, and with all the political sensitivity around it, and there is no international will for Syria to be rebuilt, and there are many local challenges for making that process possible. One of the main, of course, challenges is we do not have a vision for reconstruction. Whatever we are seeking for reconstruction, we're speaking here about the will of a country, both official and even public, if you will. People want to see another Dubai.
That's true, yes.
Yeah, and for me, just it couldn't be of a worst choice to have to build in a way that will devastate whatever has left or managed to survive the Syrian war. To build after the Gulf model, which is a model that is, it's a meaningless model. It's a model that has no society, no room for understanding home, and no future for building home. So I guess it's a blessing in disguise that we still do not have a reconstruction, as long as the general mood is to build as I have described.
The second book, Building for Hope, towards an architecture of belonging.
Yeah.
I read it, the first book is, The Battle for Home, and then Searching for a Hope, and a kind of a new frontier. That's why I asked that, what is this hope?
Well, the second, if I wrote the first book as a local story, the second book is more of a global perspective, although Syria is still at the center of the analytical, if you will, story. But after, as I said, after visiting so many cities around the world and after noticing that we share the same risk that is threatening our sense of belonging and sense of establishing home, I decided to write the book from the premise of answering the question, how do you rebuild? And it's a very general question. It's a very big question, and it was the question that you would find on the agendas of every conference, whether in the UN or a peace-building conference, or even sometimes a festival that would celebrate Syrian culture. You would find the question of rebuilding at those tables, but you never find the search of how to build home, and you never also find the question, what has led us to this destruction, aside from the political story, aside from the economic collapse. You need to understand how, as a society and different societies, how did we come to a moment that this general devastation happened, and how to avoid it in order not to happen again. But so that was the motivation to write Building for Hope, and to also to raise this red flag that even those cities that boast a progressive life and metropolitan image, and like London or Paris or Brussels or wherever, they do have a very fragile facade, and they have so many problems. The main one is the homelessness both on the pavements and at heart. And the housing crisis is on every political agenda, whether the right or the left in the West. And they do realize, as a population, they do realize that they have a problem. And Building for Hope was to take lessons from a country and a region that has a very long history. I couldn't find a better place than Damascus as a very ancient city and a very established settlement. It's the oldest continuously inhabited capital in the world. So for me it said that I must have answers to offer, and I sought those answers in the history of Damascus, and tried my best to look at policies and look at lessons and look at derive wisdom from that city and that history, and to weave it into the modern story of our global architectural landscape.
So the two issues are very integrated. There are things that are coming apparent because of war and conflict, but independent from that situation, there's an ongoing disaster actually, which is effective in many of our cities, both in West, East, Far East, whatever you say. So this Building for Hope is not limited to a case of a conflict or a war, but it's a kind of a general agenda of architecture.
Yeah.
And it is I like the example. I always use it many times. When you look at Dubai, on the one hand, it represents a richness, plurality, and technology and comfort or luxury, whatever you call it. But on the other hand, I mean, it is a kind of a corruption in the sense that, I mean, you feel your sense of belongingness on one hand, and I mean, you have to get into an interruption with all the historical, cultural bonds and things like that. So it's a kind of a issue that I think architecture. How can architecture tackle with it?
Well, that's the premise of a whole book. But I mean, I guess it's a central principle is to be sensitive to context and to give time to societies to respond to their surroundings. And let's go back to the example of Dubai and the UAE in general. If you want to, as much as to sip water, you would have to pay. You'd have to pay for, you know, if they could tax the air, they would have taxed the air. And this is what I call, I mean, I put in contrast the concept of a generous city. And the generous city is a city that would allow you to sit or allow you to do things freely. And it's not for free as if the city is offering you some kind of favor. It's your right. That's in the city. Yeah. And cities like Dubai and other cities like it, it's for pleasure. It's a city. It's like a Disneyland for the wealthy and for the elite. And with that comes a very moral corruption, by the way. You know, have the prostitution that goes as a shadow economy in the UAE and all that. I mean, there is a moral corruption, and that's because you don't have a society that would tackle any kind of corruption. And also in terms of building as a process. Look, in the region, in the Gulf, who builds? Who leads the building process? Are they the people of the place? No. I mean, you will have foreign architects, you would have foreign labor, and you would have foreign population.
Foreign management companies.
Yeah, of course. So it's
construction companies.
This is no way of living, and this is not sustainable in any way. And you cannot, you know, put like zero carbon on a building and claim it as a sustainable building. The sustainable building is a building that, like I said, would offer a place, a home for people, that would be a place that people would like to preserve for generations, a place that would, you know, not tax you for whatever you are going to do. So even in the West, there are many beautiful centers, and you would be, you know, have so nice projects and all of that, and they would be more, let's say, ethically built than the ones in the Gulf. But the same problem of taxation comes to mind, the same problem of alienation comes to mind, because you do not have a society. You didn't build for society, so you shouldn't be surprised that you do not have societies. People are there like musical chairs. They just change places because the rent goes up, or they cannot afford it anymore, or they cannot go to the place anymore. And it's because it was built for, you know, for pleasure, and built to be sold, and built to claim a message that doesn't have to do with the life of societies, and societies do not have a place to respond to that.
It also turns into a maybe representation of power, in a way, and in that sense, the concepts like sustainability, as you mentioned, green building or intelligent building, loses its real references.
Yeah, it's become another market.
Which is connected to the
marketing slogans.
Yeah, market slogans and very artificial references that doesn't touch people in that. So that is, I think, not limited with the geographies. It's a general problem or shift that we see in global scale. So, I mean, there is an ongoing migration, enormously accelerated and increasing all around the world. But since it is not because of war, if it is because of economic or other
or
reasons,
homelessness, or
homelessness,
disguised homelessness.
You don't, underline it or recall it as something problematic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is really ongoing. I mean, the connection with significant cultural, historical, geographical references becoming less meaningful, so that people can easily change their locations. On one hand, you can read it as freedom, but on the other hand, it is a lack of some of the values and senses, and it is an interruption of sustainability. Maybe it can also be read like that. So that I think that's something very important that you are underlining. Are you familiar with the Turkish cities and geographies? Is it the first time you are visiting? No.
Well, it's the first time I'm invited professionally. But it's, this is a story I've been telling here, that I was married in Turkey in a way because my husband is of Turkish origins. And we had, as a young couple, we had the choice either to have a wedding or to go on a road trip to Turkey, which was possible in those days without, the borders between us. So we went on a road trip from Homs to Istanbul, and from Istanbul to Homs, going through different cities. So I had like a love relationship with them, because I have this connection, between love and Turkey, and so this is the place Turkey takes in my heart. Yeah.
So how do you see the Turkish architecture and cities?
Well, in one word, it's Western infatuation. It's just, there is a systematic march against European identity, and there is this schizophrenic, kind of struggle between the legacy and the history of the Ottomans and the new secular identity of the Turks. So I'm not an expert here. Everything I say would have to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Okay.
Yeah, but
personal observation.
Yeah, it's not from in depth. Let's say it's just observing something from news and from general architectural culture. Let's say I think the fact that it's bloating. You could say that Turkey just bloating with urbanism. It just keep building and building for tourism, and promoting itself as a touristic destination, and I think it's very risky to put yourself as a touristic destination where you have you become a host and you sacrifice a lot in the way, whereas Turkey enjoys breathtaking sites, and it's blessed with wide geography and wide variety of people and mini cultures and micro places. And I think the greatest danger, in my own personal view, to Turkey is tourism.
What about the architectural education in Syria? Is it interrupted as well?
Well, everything is interrupted and transformed, and I think education is hit hard also before the war, when privatization entered. We enjoyed very good level of education in my days, in days of my generation. I'm the 80s generation. So we had public schools, we had public universities, we had no private educational institutions, which made the quality of our education very well, and regionally it was distinguished, even with the migration now, you would see, and because of the war, you would see that the Syrian students and Syrian doctors and engineers are just, brilliantly doing well around the world. So that is a testimony to the level of education, resourcefulness of those Syrians. But I'm afraid that changed with privatization. That story started from there, and when the teacher became a merchant, and knowledge became a product, and war was a final straw to that.
If I remember right, in one of your either writings or interviews, you are saying that people from that geography are more volunteer to become medical doctors or rather than architects and engineers.
Well, because of the grading system, just it's very strange way of looking at things. But because medicine is placed at the highest score that you could achieve in studies in your high school, so it's if you scored like now it's almost 98%. That you would have to score in order to go to medical school. So you seek to be amongst the elite. And when you become a doctor, it's just, it becomes like a testimony to your devotion and intelligence, and you would gain a social status with it. And so I guess many children absorb this culture from their parents, and it would become kind of pushed to dream to become a doctor.
Okay.
Not an engineer, by the way, but a doctor.
What about the architects now? I mean, they are still running their offices, and is there construction ongoing and projects?
Well, the last people who came back to work were the engineers in general. Structure or building expertise were not required because nobody was building anything. And if anything new was built, it became strictly the job of contractors. So nobody needs an architect anymore, in a way that I think it's architecture and architects as in general now, and after the war, they struggle a lot to.
How many architects are there in Homs?
Well, I wouldn't know that.
But there are.
Of course there are. Yeah. But I mean, this is the statistics would be at the syndicate, and I wouldn't know. You could be a taxi driver and an architect as well.
Yeah, that's the case in many countries actually. Yeah. And how do you compare? You mentioned about contextuality. I think that's something very important. I mean, caring for context, and which will be the maybe basic determinant to be a sensitive to make a sensitive design. And how do you define the contextual maybe characteristics of Middle Eastern geography, especially in Syria?
Well, first of all, I don't think Middle East is a valid term.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and
that's why I changed it to Syria.
Yeah, it's a colonization product. It was termed. I guess it's a marine officer who first used the term Middle East, and very Eurocentric. I mean, middle to where and east to where. I mean, it's just Whereas I would go with the historical terminology that was reliant on geography. For example, the Levant is the area where Greater Syria is understood, Palestine and Lebanon and the northern parts of Jordan and Syria. And this is an ancient terminology. You would look at any ancient writings, and you find the Levant as or Bilad al-Sham, the countries of Sham, revolving around Sham, which is Damascus. Yeah. So I guess it's more of a context sensitive terminology to use, and so I guess again here you are asking about how do I evaluate the situation there, and again I mean it's a devastated region. It's a region that is
no, architecture-wise, I mean. What are the contextual characteristics? I mean,
we have the remnants of the old Islamic cities, the cores. So they are termed colloquially as the old city. So every city has an old city. Yeah. And the modern extensions to it, and it depends on the municipality and how good they were in planning or running things. Again, it's very much affected by the French colonization and the plans that were put in place by the architect Michel Cochard at the beginning. So there was the Ekoshar planning for Damascus, and there was like a Benshoya plan, which is a Japanese collaborator. So there is this conflict between the old and the new, because it was never understood, like I said, as an organic way of growing. It was an entity, a foreign entity that was imposed with a political agenda. Mm-hmm. So the French, when they planned Damascus, they wanted to categorize people based on their ethnicity or religion or class. So the wealthy they built neighborhoods for the wealthy, and the wealthy were lured out of the old cities to live in distinguished modern neighborhoods, whereas they were neighbors to, class blind, if you will, urbanism. Mm-hmm. The Christian neighborhood was, was built for the Catholic Christians who were partly collaborating at the time with the French missionaries, and so it's all based on micropolitics that sought to break down the social fabric and to bring distinct elements out and put them in like Tupperwares. It's like a ghettoized urbanism and fringes for everyone. But then when people had the chance to respond, they had no room to respond, because you had the labor who were invited from the countryside to work in the factories after the independence and industrial revolution. So you had newly built factories. The countryside was abandoned, and people from the villages migrated to the cities. In Syria, they lived in places called informalities, because they were built outside of their regulatory plan. They built on their, on the government-owned land, and they built as they wished, as they responded. So they were very much as shanty houses in places. In certain places, the government went back and installed some kind of infrastructure. So it was, in a way, organized.
Relatively better.
Yeah, relatively better, but it's still bare cinder block. You would have, places with cement roof, but other places without cement roof, and you would have sometimes like a complete town which you would think, okay, it's properly built, but it's not, architecturally planned or in any way somebody had thought how this building would have light, for example, or would have some kind of air. So it's very crammed, and they don't have legal ownership.
Actually, it is very similar in many cities, including Western cities. There's a central old city, Haymarket, whatever is existing there, and then there's the second and third periphery, which is more modern or built later, let me say. I think the problem is, how do we integrate these chambers, and how we utilize, how we recognize, how we, establish a link between the historical center. On one hand, you can keep it as a kind of an isolated museum piece, okay, visited time to time, but leftover. Or it may be still the integral part of the city. I think that is something.
Well, there is a contextual difference here, because and that's because it's the difference between Western culture and Muslim culture, actually, because in the West, in Islam, we don't have a feudal class. We didn't have a feudal class. We didn't have the nobles and the peasants as in the West.
In theoretical sense.
No, no, because even if you are referring to the late days of the Ottomans, where feudalism, it's not a feudalism at heart, but I've studied that because it's because of the land reclamation code the Ottomans had enforced at the late at the late days, when actually the collapse days, if you can term it that way.
There are lots of ways to read this. If you, for example, look at how we share the income of the country, how much money is held, what percent of the
but feudalism,
society. Okay,
yeah, but
that's
feudalism.
another way of reading it. So I mean, it's not only about land ownership or other things. So when we look at these societies, there's a huge difference between how we share the income and inequality in terms of.
No, there is a major difference, and let me say my point of view here.
Okay.
In the Western history, let's say, there is a distinct difference. A class difference. So there was before the wars and before abandoning the monarchy as an entity, as a ruling entity. It was you had the noble class, and you had the king, you had the noble class, and you had the peasants. Whereas in the Muslim culture, you didn't have a king who owns land. The state owned the land, and you didn't have noble class, which also were who worked for the king and owned tract of land as a reward. We don't have this in the Muslim property legislation. We do have two kinds of ownership in Muslim legislation. We have the Miri land, which is the state-owned land and which was rented to people to work with the right of tasarruf, which tasarruf, which means they could plant it, they could they could excavate and take minerals or whatever there is, and this can be inherited. This is very important here, because the fact that you can inherit a right regardless of your class and based on your work in the land means that you have a chance to build societies. That's agrarian societies.
Yeah, that's pre-industrial. We are
yeah,
talking
of course,
about
pre-industrial,
case,
but
yes,
this is the core that built the old cores. You made the connection or the comparison between the old parts of Western cities and the old parts of the Muslim cities, and there is a huge difference here between the old parts there and old parts there, and it's based on how the class inherited the land or the property, in which hands they were. So there is a huge difference here, that we didn't have feudalism and we didn't have a class division as in the West, and that is manifested in how the old historical parts were built. So the old historical parts in our cities are a complete city. Just it's not touristic. It's not a castle or it's a church or a mosque. It's not a monument. And around it there were the cottages of some some people. There is a complete urban fabric, and this is an urban fabric that was transformed very organically, and this is what I highlight in my writing as a complete city, as a living city, as a productive center. And this is the place that I take lessons from in my second book, in Building for Hope, and derive policies and legislations and ways of looking at the city in order to deal with our current situation.
But in the current situation, rather than geographical or religion-based differences, the mode of industrialization, the general economic power differences, the energy sources are very, significant issues that transforms the general cultural milieu. If you look at, we are talking about Dubai, for example.
This is another thing.
The main power behind that kind of urbanization is not religion, of course. It's a kind of power that comes with the energy sources and things like that, the accumulation of the money, kind of an investment. So if you look at the modes and models, it's a kind of an international way of doing it, which is freed from maybe any belief or any kind of a religious source. There are minor differences, as you said, within Western societies and in terms of urbanization, of course.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think that religion is a source of any wealth or, you know, wealth-inducing power. It just...
I mean, how it reflects to urbanization, I mean.
How every country has its own wealth resources. I think management of those resources is how is reflected on how we build. So basically this is another thing that we can differentiate between the Western approach and...
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to outline.
Yeah, so the Western approach towards the city is based on two things. First, you have company-led process. And the second thing you have credit loans. You have finances by the bank. So those two things means that you have no limits to the power of very few individuals. They have, you know, accumulation of leverage on the building industry. Yes. And that means they would buy large tracts of land and they would build very large projects. And this is the case in the Gulf as well. Whereas in places like Syria before the war, because we have to
differentiate.
Yeah, differentiate. People are inhibited from taking loans by individual choice. The government, you know, was reinforcing the same things as the French did. I mean, the first bank was opened in Beirut by the Ottomans, you know, in the 19th century, and that's when the whole mess started, by the way. But when you have the individual choice that you won't take credit, you know, or loan credit to build, that means that your resources are limited to the best of your abilities. And that means that you are not, you know, you don't have the shadow companies and you don't have these facades that launder, you know, wash money and all of that. You have a protection of small tracts of property, and you have smaller individual ownership, and that's the key to variety, and that's the key to a powerful urbanization. But when people started to be lured in order to, you know, fall in the temptations of that Western approach, that the mess started to happen.
Yeah, I understand your point, but I mean, I'm not so sure if it is something directly related with East or West. I mean, as you referred to Middle East, I mean, I had a writing years ago. I was saying that the West of West is East. So I mean, it is very difficult to differentiate the impact of, I mean, cultural dynamics, I mean, in the age of globalization, of course. Now, I mean, look how China is transforming itself. I mean, look at the Gulf, Turkey countries. And
no, it's not East and West binary. It's
no,
it's Islamic or Muslim legacy and legislations, because Islam is understood.
Where do you put Dubai?
Non-Islamic, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, it's
Islam is.
So you are talking about a philosophy.
Of course,
more than a geographical reference.
Of course,
okay,
it's not an ideology. It's not about even, you know, practice. It's although practice is in a way like with the loan thing. Is related, but it's not. It's about, like you said. I mean, it's the word philosophy is an apt word here to describe it. It's just, you know, because it's a legislation that survived for over I don't know. It's like 17. How long? I mean, it's. I think it's 14 centuries that those legislation served the urbanization that is not, you know, the urbanization of coexistence and the urbanization of organic growth. Whereas you can compare, I mean, like you said, I mean, the East and West is not a binary anymore.
That's true, yeah. That was what I was trying to underline. But on the other hand, I mean, there is a kind of the cities usually grow as layers, and there are lots of cultural layers. If you look at Istanbul, for example, I mean, there are different cultures, different religions, and different, let's say, periods
Of course, I mean
coming
Damascus.
onto each other, as Damascus. Yeah.
Damascus, the
Yeah.
Umayyad, which is, you know, the most notable.
So I mean, it is not easy to isolate it from a kind of a, let's say, that integral and complicated structure. The societies are like that. I mean, we are living together with different people, and it's a kind of a integral cultural whole. So I mean, things are becoming in that sense not easy, of course, and maybe we need a more communication in that term, and trying to understand the culture of the others in a way to move forward. Let me ask, what is your hope in that sense?
Well, of course, my hope is to see my country rebuilt in a way that stays relevant to its history and its legacy, and where there is a place for all the different communities and different people and ethnicities that live in and had lived for centuries in this place, and to see it revived in the true sense of meaning, you know. That's for my own country. Of course, I hope this happens to every other region and every other country, that we find a way to establish homes for people and to, you know, realize the threats that we are dealing with in our pursuit for, you know, an easier life or a better life, as the slogan goes.
Yeah. I hope so. One last question, maybe. In the TED Talk, there was a very significant title, How Syrian Architecture Laid the Foundation of a Brutal War.
Well, you realize that I do not choose the title for the TED Talk. That's the TED company.
Yeah. I know that, but
it has paved the way.
Do you agree with the question? Of
course, I agree that. Are you asking me about, you know, to elaborate on the question?
Is that significant, the role of architecture? We are now coming back to where we have started. Maybe, but is it that powerful? Architecture is powerful enough to, let's say, establish such foundations?
Well, it's the most powerful tool we humans do on Earth. I mean, since our arrival to Earth, I mean, since our creation, everything we did is to build. We build our way around life, and this is how we respond to the universe around us, and this is how we connect with people around us. This is how you you have a neighbor, or you don't. And this is how you have a job, or you don't.
But it's valid for all geographies and all architecture, maybe.
Of course, I mean, I
it's
think
not nothing specific to Syrian.
No, I guess we made it clear throughout the conversation that the message, I guess the importance of the message is it has resonated with the, you know, internationally with people from around the world. And if it wasn't a human message, it wouldn't have resonated so much.
Let's hope things will become better.
Inshallah.
And we will talk some other issues in the following conversations. MARWA Al SABOUNI, thank you very much for being with us. Is there anything that you want to add?
No.
That I mean, it should be better if we talked about these issues. Is there anything in your mind?
No, I enjoyed very much the conversation. Thank you so much. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, many things at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's nice to see you here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hope to see you again.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the interview and for the conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.